guys, today we're going to start solving equations. The first page of notes here, we have solving one-step equations. The idea for when we solve equations is we want to use the opposite operation when solving equations. So in this first section, we have addition and subtraction that are opposites. For example, if you look at problem number 1, 5 is being added to x. So in order to solve the equation for x, we want to do the opposite and subtract 5. What you want to do when solving equations is when you do an operation to one side, you have to do the same operation to the other side. So when we subtract 5 on both sides, we would be left with x equals -4 minus 5 is -9. So our answer here is x equals -9. And if you wanted to check to see if your answer is right, you could always plug -9 in for x and see if the equation is true. For example, if x is -9, we'd have -9 plus 5 equals -4. -9 plus 5 is -4, and since that is equal to -4, we know we're correct and that -9 is the solution. Going over to problem number 2, here is our variable. It happens to be y, and ask yourself what is happening to the y variable. 5 is being taken away from it with subtraction. So again, we're going to do the opposite operation to solve for it and add 5 on both sides. Notice that when you add 5, -5 plus 5 is 0, and you're just left with the y on the right side of the equal sign. And on the left side, 10 plus 5 is 15. When you write your answer to an equation, you always want to write the variable first, so we would have y equals to 15 as our answer. Number 3 and 4 now show problems where you have two signs. For example, in number 3, you are subtracting a negative number. When you see problems like 3 and 4 that have two signs, what you first want to do is you want to change it so it has one sign. For example, when you subtract a negative, that turns into addition. So our new equation is p plus 5 equals 11. And now similarly to number 1, what operation are we going to do to both sides to solve for p? Well, 5 is being added to p, so we're going to do the opposite and subtract 5 on both sides. When you subtract 5 from 5, you get 0. So we're left with p is equal to 6 as our answer. Similar to number 3, number 4 also has two signs. However, unlike number 3, we have adding a negative number. When you add a negative number, that is going to change into just subtracting. When you're adding a negative, it's the same as subtracting. So now that we have one operation, we know that we should do the opposite to solve for it. 3 is being taken away from k, so what we're going to do to solve is add 3 to both sides to get 11 equals k, because -3 plus 3 is 0. And we always want to write, again, our answer with the variable first, so we have our answer as k equals 11. So the first section, we were dealing with adding and subtracting as opposites of each other. And the second section, we're dealing with multiplying or dividing. In number 5, what is happening to our variable y? It's being multiplied times 4. So in order to solve for y, we're going to divide 4 on both sides. 4 divided by 4 is 1, which just leaves us with y. When solving, we always want the variable to end up all by itself, equals to -48 divided by 4 is -12. Number 7 is similar. However, number 5, we use division to solve. Number 7, we're going to use multiplication. Why are we going to use multiplication? Because what is happening to the variable? It's being divided by 5, so the opposite is multiplying by 5. What you do to one side, you do to the other side of the equation. The 5's cross simplify, because remember when we multiply fractions, an integer is over 1, and we could cross simplify, in which we're just left with g equals 2 times 5 is 10. And lastly, number 9, we're going to be dealing with fractions. We have 1/2 times x equals 4. 1/2 is being multiplied to x, so we're going to do the opposite and divide. How do you divide fractions? You're going to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal is that fancy word that means flip the fraction upside down. What is the reciprocal of 1 over 2? It would be 2 over 1. What you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other, so we're multiplying 2 over 1 on both sides. Remember, when you are multiplying fractions, you could cross simplify, in which the 2 over 1 and 1/2 cancel each other out to get x equals. And here, since there's nothing to cross simplify, we're just going to multiply the fraction straight across to get 8 over 1, or just 8. What I'd like you guys to do is pause the video, try 6, 8, and 10, and once you get your answers, play the video to check back. Here are your answers for 6, 8, and 10, the even problems. They are similar to the problems, the odd problems next to it. In order to solve for x, we're going to divide -6 on both sides for number 6. -6 divided by -6 is 1, so they cancel each other out. And -36 divided by -6 is +6. So our final answer would just be x equals 6. In number 8, the variable f is being divided by -3, so the opposite operation would be to multiply by -3. When you do, the -3's cross simplify, that will just leave us with the f, and -3 times -8 is +24, therefore we'd be left with our answer, f is 24. And number 10, similarly to number 9, 2/3 is being multiplied to y. So we're going to divide 2/3 on both sides. Since it's a fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is 3 over 2. The 3's cross simplify, the 2's cross simplify just to give us y. And when we multiply the fractions on the right, 6 can be a fraction by putting it over 1. And we will multiply straight across. 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 2 is 2. 18 divided by 2 gives us our answer, 9. So this first page is all single step equations. You just have to do one operation to both sides to solve for the variable. Our second page today is now involving multi-steps. That means we're going to do more than one step in order to solve for our variable. What you need to remember is that you always want to first add or subtract and then multiply or divide when you're solving. For example, number 1, should I add or subtract first? Well, we always still want to do the opposite operation, and since addition is in our equation, we're first going to do the opposite and subtract. And we will subtract 5 on both sides. What we'd be left with is 2x, 5 minus 5 is 0, equals 7 minus 5 is 2. Since our variable x is not all by itself yet, we still have one more step to do. We're going to do the opposite of what's happening to it. So 2 is being multiplied to x. We're going to do the opposite and divide by 2 on both sides of the equation. After dividing 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, which would just leave us with x. And on the right side, 2 divided by 2 again is 1. Therefore, we get our answer, x equals 1. Again, just like the first side, you could always double check to see if your answer is correct by plugging it into your original equation. Let's say x was 1, we would have 2 times 1 plus 5 equals 7. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 5 equals 7. And does this come out to be a true statement or a true equation? 2 plus 5 is 7. That does equal 7. They're the same on both sides. Therefore, we know our answer is x is 1. Let's take a look at number 3. We're going to go straight down. Again, we're going to either add or subtract first. Since there's addition in the problem, we're going to do the opposite and subtract 21 on both sides. We'd be left with t divided by 8. 21 minus 21 is 0, equals 2. Since it's 14 minus 21, we know we're going to have a negative number, and our answer is going to be negative 7. The next thing we do, since the variable isn't alone yet, we're going to do the last opposite operation. We're either going to multiply or divide. Since t is being divided by 8, we're going to do the opposite and multiply by 8. 8s are going to cross simplify, and we'd be left with the variable equals negative 7 times 8 is negative 56. Going on to number 5, this is going to be similar to one on the previous page. Again, are we going to add or subtract first? Well, since there's subtraction in the equation, we're going to do the opposite and add. We're moving everything away from the variable. In this case, that's a. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0, equals 11 plus 8 is 19. And just like the previous side, when you're dividing a fraction on both sides, you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2, or 2 over 1. The 2's will cross simplify, leaving us with a equals 19 times 2 is going to give us 38. And for our last problem, this is actually different than all the ones before, because as you could see, this entire side of the equation is being divided by 3. We don't want to add 5 to both sides first, because technically another way to write this would be y divided by 3 minus 5 divided by 3, and in this case we wouldn't add 5 to solve that equation because we have actually a fraction 5/3. Instead of dealing with the fractions, what we want to do is actually get rid of this denominator first by multiplying it on both sides. So we're going to multiply by 3. The 3's cross simplify to leave us with the numerator y minus 5 equals 2 times 3 is 6. Lastly, we'll do the opposite of subtracting 5. We'll add 5 to both sides. Negative 5 plus 5 is 0, where we would be left with y equals 11. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is pause the video and try the even problems for these notes. They are almost identical to the problems right next to them, so you could always refer back to your notes while doing the even problems. Once you're done with the answers, play the videos and I will go over each of the problems with you. Here are our answers for the even problems of the multi-step equations. Remember, we always want to add or subtract first, so in number 2, we added 4 to both sides. To get 11x equals 33, we'll then divide the 11 to isolate our variable, or solve for our variable, which would end up being x equals 3. Number 4, since 5 is being subtracted, we're going to do the opposite and add 5 to both sides first. And since the x is being divided by 4, we're going to do the opposite and multiply by 4 on both sides, which would leave us with our answer x equals 12. Number 6, we're going to first subtract 2, since 2 is being added to the 3t in the original equation. And lastly, we'll multiply by our reciprocal 2/3, in which 12 over 1 times 2/3 would be 24/3, and 24 divided by 3 gives us 8. Lastly, number 8 is similar to number 7, where we have the entire side of the equation being divided by one number. In this case, this is the only time we're going to not add or subtract first. You're actually going to multiply by the denominator first so that they cross simplify. You'd be left with just what's at the top, 2p plus 4 equals to positive 34. You would then subtract our 4 on both sides, where 4 minus 4 will be 0. And then lastly, divide 2 on both sides of the equation to get our final answer, p is 15. Please make sure that this entire video is written down in your notebook or on the printed blank notes. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know.